Welcome to Fan Counters. My name is Nick.
And I'm Elizabeth.
And you can follow us on social media. Go to Twitter and Instagram and follow at Fan Counters Live. Our biggest community of supporters and listeners are on Facebook. You can go to Facebook and search Fan Counters to find our community. And we are over 30,000 strong, and we thank you for listening. Now, on today's show, we've got an icon of the 1950s, 60s, and all the way up through today.
Yes.
An A-list television star. And I'm very excited to welcome Jerry Mathers to the program.
Well, and I was kind of surprised because, of course, I was born in the late 60s. And I remember the opening credits that would say, and Jerry Mathers as the Beaver.
The Beaver, yeah.
And, you know, the funny thing is we've been so excited, you and I, that he was coming on, that we have been telling everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even have to say the Beaver.
Right.
I don't even have to say Leave It To Beaver. I only have to say Jerry Mathers. And that's pretty darn good because it takes a lot. Like if I say to you, you know, Anson Williams, it's going to take most people a little while to figure out it's Potsy from Happy Days. You know what I'm saying? Like I know the character, I don't know the actor.
Mm-hmm.
And so kudos to Jerry because every time I mention his name, I never even got to say the Beaver. And everyone was like, oh, the Beaver is coming on.
Now, his wife, Teresa, has been amazing in helping me set up this interview and getting prepared for it. She has told me that according to Tony Dow, he believes that Jerry Mathers has probably signed more autographs than any television star in the history of television.
Oh, my
Because he
gosh.
started at such a young age. He's been signing now for 60 years.
Oh, my gosh.
So it's a pretty amazing thing. Now, sitting here in our studio today, I'm welcoming my dad, probably the biggest Leave It To Beaver fan on the planet, although I know you're listening and you're like, no, that's me. This guy still DVRs it every morning, and I've told him, you've got the series. Just pop it in and watch whatever show you want. But he doesn't. He just keeps DVRing it.
What I've heard your dad say, that one of the reasons he loves the show is because it really reflected what his life was like at that same time.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, your dad's roughly the same age, and that whatever the Beavers family was doing was pretty much what typical America was doing at the time. And as I've told you off the air, I watched a couple of episodes the other day, and I heard the Beaver kept saying, I'm going to mess around with Whitey after school. And his dad goes, well, could you mess around with Whitey another day? And my daughter walked in and said, what? What's going on? I was like, oh, changing the channel. So I believe it probably portrayed what was happening in the 50s. It does not portray what is happening now.
Yeah, the same dialogue is used for
yes, completely different
things
now.
All right, so let's get to the show. Now, according to People magazine, our guest today is one of the most well-known individuals in television history. Best known for his role of Theodore, Beaver Cleaver, Jerry Mathers is the world's first child star. Before Leave It To Beaver, he starred in The Trouble with Harry for Alfred Hitchcock, which starred John Forsythe, and Shirley MacLaine, which was one of Shirley MacLaine's very first film roles. Following that, he appeared in 2 Bob Hope movies and 2 movies with Alan Ladd.
It was 1957 when this TV series Leave It To Beaver debuted, and Jerry quickly entered into the hearts and homes of America. Running for 6 seasons and 234 episodes, the series can still be seen around the world. Following success on the new Leave It To Beaver series, which filmed 108 episodes, Jerry appeared on Broadway, starring as Wilbur Turnblad in the Tony Award-winning Best Musical Hairspray.
In addition to being a spokesperson for many diabetes-related issues, Jerry continues to do commercial work for national and regional spots. Now, did you know that Jerry Mathers was the first non-athlete to appear on a box of cornflakes?
I did not.
I did not either until I did the research. Today, he is here to share many more unknown facts and stories, and it's our pleasure to welcome Jerry Mathers.
Coming to you from nowhere near the entertainment capital of the world, this is Fan Counters with Nick and Elizabeth on the PodFix network.
There was this mob of people, and they're screaming my name.
Crazy fans.
Stop following me. Don't come around my house. If you do, the cops are going to be at yours.
If I'm having dinner with my wife, don't sit down at my table. Don't follow me into the bathroom.
Can I take a picture? We're going to, oh my God.
I think this guy wants to fight me. Ended up being a fan.
I'm the only one that's ever been on Sam Jackson and lived to tell about it.
That's why we call it Fan Counters.
Well, guess what? I have a big surprise for you.
I don't think you're going to last on the air very long.
Hey, Nick, how you doing, Elizabeth?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Couldn't be better.
Well, thanks for taking some time today to talk to us and answer all these burning questions we have.
My pleasure. Oh, they're burning. We better hurry up and put out the fires.
Well, Jerry Mathers, welcome to Fan Counters. We're very glad to have you here today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
You bet. Now, the celebrity media world makes a really huge deal about the success and failures of former child stars, and you're actually one of the very first child stars ever, and definitely the most recognizable and most successful. Since your role on Leave It To Beaver is one of the ones that you're most associated with, are your memories of being on the show as a child a positive set of experiences for you?
Oh, absolutely. I've been an actor since I was 2 years old. And, I think a lot of the unpositive ones were people that they didn't really wanted to be an actor. Their parents maybe wanted to be an actor or someone in the family and pushed them into it. Mine just kind of came by accident. My dad retired as the superintendent of LA City Schools, but when I was about 2 years old, he was just starting. He was a coach, and he taught at a school. And my mom was walking through a department store looking for clothes. And, of course, teachers didn't make a lot of money, so she was looking very carefully for clothes. And a lady walked up to her and said, "Is this your son?" And she went, "Oh, did he touch something? Whatever it is, we will pay for it." And the lady said, "No, but I've just looked at him, and you were trying some clothes on him, and he fit our clothes perfectly. And I was wondering if he could be a model." And my mom kind of went, "Oh, this is the big city." She was from Minnesota. My dad was from Iowa. They both lived in Los Angeles for a few years. But she said, "Well, I just don't know." And the lady said, "Well, we would pay him and he could keep the clothes." And my mom said, "He could do that."
How quickly our minds change when there's free clothes involved.
That's right. And money.
Yeah. One of the questions I hope we get an answer for is, where did the Cleavers live? We know Mayfield, but where is that? A couple of episodes we're given clues, like number 1, Wally mentions that the governor is living in Madison, which makes us believe it's in Wisconsin like we are. And then there's another one where Beaver wants to buy a surfboard, but so there must be a body of water nearby, which could also still be Wisconsin. Did the Cleavers live in Wisconsin?
I don't want to burst your bubble, but it's possible.
It's possible.
But they never said. They definitely wanted to make it all-American. By all-American, I mean that people in any state could say, well, that could be my state. So as many things as you found for your state, Wisconsin, there are other things that other people have told me, oh, it's this state or that state.
Okay.
We did film in Los Angeles, but that they never ever say it's Los Angeles.
Well,
the other thing is it never snows. So
that's
if
true.
You watch, we don't have any seasons.
It does never snow.
It's like perpetually, not even winter. It's perpetually probably spring.
Yes. Now that you say that, I hadn't. Yeah. You're right, though. But that's clever, though, of the show's creators to make it feel like everyone's America, to make it feel like,
right,
this is your hometown.
And absolutely. And they also wanted it. It goes all over the world. It plays in about 30 languages all over the world. So they wanted it to look like the all-American boy and his family living in the all-American city with no snow. We did get rain once in a while, though, so,
Yeah, all right.
No place is perfect.
You've said in other interviews that occasionally you still watch the show. I was wondering, are there certain episodes that when you watch them, you remember something else that was going on in your personal life at the time?
The closest thing that I can tell you about it is just like when you maybe go to your parents' house, or maybe they passed them down home movies, maybe 8mm. If you were really lucky, maybe 16. But a lot of us have those old 8mm. If you still have a projector, most of them don't have sound. But I have the ideal thing. I can go back and pretty much remember that week in my life because each show is so different. And we had a crew of about 100 people. And they were all my very good friends. There were makeup men and grips and cameramen and lighting people and the other actors on the show. And, in each week, if you could have maybe someone that went to your school and filmed each week of you in school, something different happened. And then so it triggers things in me going, oh, that was the week this happened or that happened. And, for anybody else, it wouldn't mean anything. But they're all very special moments in my life.
Do you remember what the scheduling was like? Now, we assume that there were child labor rules that they had to be followed. But,
oh, absolutely.
But what was tell me if you can remember, what was a typical scheduling week? What did your week look like?
My week was absolutely the most fun week of any child. I worked from, of course, Monday through Friday. And occasionally we would do personal appearances on the weekends, but not very much when we were shooting. We shot for 39 weeks. The schedule was Monday we'd go in and read the script. The writers had written it over the weekend, and towards the end of that week they'd start it. And it was sent out on Friday night, and we'd get it Saturday morning. And my mom, because I couldn't read at the time, would read it to me. Monday we'd go in and we'd have a reading, and we'd read it twice, and then the writers would go and basically rewrite it. And if maybe we garbled some words or something didn't really sound right, or maybe it ran too long or too short, they'd add or subtract.
Okay.
Tuesday we'd go in and block it, because it was done just like a 35 millimeter movie. So it was shot on 35 millimeter film. It wasn't live, and it wasn't on tape. It was on film. And then Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday we'd shoot, and we had the weekends to ourselves. A lot of times we do, a little PR on weekends. We shot for 39 weeks, and we'd usually go out on tour. We'd go to New York at the end of it when we were just getting ready to go back to premiere the next season. But, we'd do a lot of personal appearances in different cities around the country, and it was a very, very popular show. It was never really number one. It was number one for maybe a week or two, but it was always in the top 10, maybe the top 15. And so it was very popular, and we could go all over the country, and people would come out, and we'd sign autographs, and it was just a really good, nice, clean life.
How old were you when you started?
Leave It To Beaver, I was about 8. We did the pilot, and then I did it for the next 6 years. So I was just starting to be a teenager when I finished the show, and my voice was changing and everything else.
So at 8, how many pages of dialogue are you having to memorize if you can't read all of this?
Well, basically we would read the script on a Monday. It would come out to us on Friday night as we were leaving from the previous show. They'd hand you a script. It was called a white copy. Over the weekend, they might redo it a little bit, but not a whole lot. It was pretty well done.
So
then
you're memorizing
Tuesday,
this all weekend long?
Not really. I would wait till Monday. I mean, my parents, I couldn't, basically when I first started, I couldn't even, I was just in first and second, third grade. So, I wasn't definitely, my mom would read it to me and I would memorize it. And then the next 3 days we'd shoot.
Do you have a favorite episode?
That's like saying, do you have a favorite day in elementary school? There were many ones that were so much fun that there's not really one that was just the absolute most fun. I worked with alligators. I worked with dogs and cats. I worked with some of the greatest, Edgar Buchanan, and all the, the people that maybe weren't stars, but were all the background people you see in so many other of the series. And we had a crew of about 50 people, and every day we were doing interesting things. I'd have the guys that were the lighting technicians, and those guys, they all had families at home. And you can't make a child work, so you have to make it fun for them.
Yeah.
So I would build boats, and they would help me carve them, and I'd paint pictures and just do all sorts of things. And I grew up basically at the studio from the time I was in first grade till about 8th.
And your mom is with you this whole time?
My mom was with me. Well, my mom, actually, I'm the oldest, but I have brothers and sisters so for about 3 or 4 months, or maybe a little bit more, when they were just getting ready to come, I would go with either a friend of the family, usually a very good friend of the family, or my aunt.
Okay.
But yes, my mom was there most of the time.
Now, I do have a favorite episode, and that was the one when Wally was cutting Beaver's hair, and you ask, "Are you done?" And he says, "No, but I better stop." I always wondered, were they really shaving your head, or was that a skull cap? Or
No, it was definitely a skull cap. They had we got very, very lucky. Our makeup man, his name was Bob Don, but he was also, just by coincidence, because Leave It To Beaver was a great show as far as a crew to work on. And the reason was because we were all, the kids were there, and most of these people were family members. When you work on a script or a show that has just adults, you start at 8 in the morning, but if you're not finished at 5, then you go on and they give you a dinner break and you keep working. With Leave It To Beaver, at 5, all the kids would go home. They do a little bit more, but Bob Don was the makeup man, and he did all sorts of appliance makeups. So he did Creature from the Black Lagoon, all the masks and things like that. So I had a wonderful time growing up because they had what they call a lab, and we'd go there and I'd watch him do all these different kinds of things. Like if somebody was going to be, say, shot or hurt in something, he was the one that would do all the makeup for it. But since our show was so easy to work on, because we only worked basically from 8 till 5, maybe 6, instead of some of the shows that worked basically into the night, everybody wanted to get onto it, so he was our makeup man.
Nice.
Well, but you won't see his name because they only put the name of the head of the department. So they'll say probably if you watch the show, Jack Barron, just because I always say things like that. And people say, I saw the show and it said this is this other man.
Oh.
He was head of the department. The same with the hairdresser and the lighting. It was the head of that department. They had probably 15 or 20 people that were under him, but they were the ones that were in the credits.
Now, the child cast of the show really did turn out some exceptional adults. Ken Osmond, Eddie Haskell, he became an L.A. police officer who was shot in the line of duty. Did he ever worry about his life being in jeopardy, being on the job that you knew of?
No, he's just, he's a patriot, basically. That's what he always wanted to do. And if you look at him, and, of course, people on the show think he's just like that. No, he's a totally different guy. But if you look at him physically, he was very, very skinny. He's not anybody that's probably ever been, he's always been underweight. He had to eat all sorts of weird foods and just stuff himself to even make the minimum weight to be an LA police officer. And then, of course, he wants to be a motorcycle cop because he always was a motorcycle person. So not only then, he's a motorcycle cop, he has to be put in the part of LA that's not the very nicest part of LA. It's kind of one of the districts that you don't really want to be walking around with at night, and he's a motorcycle cop down there at night. So he was on the force, retired, but he retired because he was shot in the line of duty. He was actually shot 2 different times, but the second time it was bad enough that they gave him a partial retirement, and then he fully retired.
Did you ever hear any of his stories about some of the encounters he must have had on the job because he was famous? Like, it's got to be hard to do a normal job and have people recognize you.
Well, he said that a lot of people didn't. He said because he was a motorcycle policeman, so it wasn't like he, always had on sunglasses, and he used to wear the mirrored sunglasses.
Okay.
And he said, he told me, some people would recognize him, but when somebody pulls you over and is giving you a ticket, you don't really think of Eddie Haskell. You just think, here's this guy in this helmet, the uniform, the big badge, and he's giving me a ticket, and you're telling him all the reasons why.
Right,
you don't
I'd like
think
to
you
get
did
out of
whatever
it,
you
yes.
tell him you did.
Now, your brother, Tony Dow, is a cancer survivor. He's done some directing, but these days he excels at art, creating some amazing sculptures. Do you own one of these?
No, I do not, but he has always been an artist. In fact, that was one of the maybe perks. I'm a graduate of Berkeley. I hold a degree in philosophy, but Tony, when we were doing Leave It To Beaver, was basically in high school. I think he had 1 year of grammar school, but all his teachers, because you have a studio teacher and you go to school right on the set, were always people that had doctorates in art. So he has been priming maybe or practicing to be an artist ever since he was on Leave It To Beaver, and that was really his calling. And he does a lot of sculpturing and art, and he does very, very beautiful pieces. I've seen a lot of them, and they're all very, very interesting, and all basically have some kind of a story.
Nice. Now, I know that you guys have an event coming up in Massachusetts, and we'll talk about that at the end of the show. But since you're doing it with Tony Dow, do you guys travel together?
When you say travel together,
well, I mean,
no,
are you sitting on the airplane together?
We live in different.
Oh, okay.
It's possible, but there are a lot of different flights, and depending on our schedules. But we're good friends, so it's not like we have to sit right together and we're worried about the other one doing something. I know he's going to be there. He knows I'm going to be there.
Gotcha.
And sometimes we do fly together, but it's not like I have to. It's not like I need a handler or he does.
Well, no, I'm just imagining the looks people would give you if you guys were sitting next to each other on a flight.
I think I'd freak out if the Beav and Wally were sitting on a plane in front of me together. I'd be like, what just happened here?
Usually that does happen sometimes, and or flight attendants will come and they see you, or they see him or me, and they'll go, oh, hi, and they'll talk to you, and then they'll go, wait a minute, I was just back there. Is that Tony Dow? Or the other one will come to him and say, is that Jerry Mathers? So, I mean, we've all changed a lot, and we're always happy to have people recognize it. It's always nice to know that people appreciate you for something you did so long ago. And, you know, it's not like we have anything to be embarrassed about. It's the longest running show in television history. And, gee, you know, these are all our friends who are watching us. But it's always fun. I like Tony. I like all the people on the show. There was nobody that we had that was kind of, oh, that person that you didn't want to work with or didn't want to be around. So it was always a really good experience for me. And I'm certainly glad that, you know, when we do appearances together, we can be together, kind of like a reunion.
So Frank Bank wrote an autobiography and mentioned that he was a bit of a ladies' man, and that's not really what I want to talk about. But what I'm wondering is Hugh Beaumont was an ordained Methodist minister. So I've always wondered, did that cause tensions for them on the set or off the set? Like, were there disagreement of opinion or anything like that?
Hugh was an ordained minister. I'll go into that one first. And the only reason he was an actor was because he was, after World War II, came back and decided to go into the ministry. And he went to one of the poorest and worst sections of Los Angeles and took up a church that basically no other minister wanted because it was kind of the dregs. And one of his specialties was working with people that had problems with alcohol. And so he needed some kind of, and those people at that church really couldn't afford a pastor. So he needed a job that he could work, not part-time, but, you know, not full-time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how he became an actor in the late 1940s. And so when he started Leave It to Beaver, I think it gave him the ability. He was working full-time, but he still was an active minister, and he could build up that church, I say, and preach to people and try to help a lot of people. So I think when people see Leave It to Beaver and he comes up and talks to Beaver and, you know, tells him whatever I had done that week that, you know, I should have known better, but it's not the end of the world. I think that a lot of times he would call on his being a minister.
That's funny you should say that, because I did not know that little fun fact until Nick put it in front of me this morning. But I have to tell you that in retrospect, when you look at them, the way he talks to you is sometimes very much like that, like a guiding person who is just trying to keep you on the straight and narrow.
Well, you're just lucky you didn't see him as Michael Shane, which was his big part before Leave It to Beaver, which was a movies that he did. They were called B movies or sometimes trailers, and they show before the really feature. And Michael Shane is this really tough, drinking, smoking detective that when he wants any information, he takes you and pounds you up against the wall.
Oh, yeah,
So
that would have ruined
so
my little
far
image.
Well, I just wanted to tell you in case you see that, and you'll go, wait a minute.
Wait a minute, what goes on here?
But when he was doing Leave It to Beaver, he came into who he really was, and I think he really appreciated that.
So was there any bad feelings between Frank Bank and Hugh Beaumont?
Absolutely not. Everybody on the set, and in fact, the producers went to great lengths when they were hiring people to make sure that they didn't get anybody that, I don't want to say diva, but
sure,
that wasn't somebody that would cause problems, because the people they were looking at to hire were people that they knew they'd be working with, not only the cast members, but the producers long term. So they were looking for people that got along, not only the children, but the adults, and also the children's parents, to make sure that everybody, you know, wasn't somebody that was going to give them trouble, because that wasn't something they needed. And there were enough people out there that they could find some really good people. And because of that and their diligence, we had a very, very happy 6 years where everybody got along. There was never any huge fight of, I won't work with that person, or they're getting too much time, or whatever it was. Everybody liked everybody else, and we were all still friends.
Speaking of Hugh Beaumont, your website, jerrymathers.com, has a film that the two of you did together before Leave It to Beaver called A House in Order. And because of that film and your mom, Hugh was cast in Leave It to Beaver. Can you tell me how that happened?
Well, I believe, and that's a long time ago, I think it was for a place called Rolls Hills, which was maybe a cemetery. And it was about people passing, and it was not a commercial, but more of maybe a very early infomercial or something like that. And so I had gone in, and I was not doing Leave to Beaver either. It wasn't like he came in late or something. But I was working all the time as an actor. And I went in, and I met this man, and he said, would you like to run our lines? And he helped me with some of the lines, and he was just a very, very nice man. But a lot of that, not that everybody, all the other actors weren't nice, but he was a minister, so he was, especially nice. He was also a youth minister, so he knew how to deal with kids, and it was just very nice to have somebody like that with, that moral perspective on the set. When they were casting, they came to my mom and said, are there any of these people that do you think would be better for the part? Not that she would be any, but they just didn't want any conflicts on the set.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom said, well, Hugh Beaumont, we've worked with him. Jerry really likes him. Tony had met him and really liked him. And, he was somebody, not that was the final word, but we were very, very hopeful that he would be the one that played the part.
Right after the show ended in June
Sure.
of 1963, President Kennedy was assassinated, and people are always interested in, do you know or remember what was happening in your life that day when you heard the news?
I really don't. I mean, I wasn't doing the show. I was just, and I don't mean to say this in a derogatory way, but I was just a regular kid then. I went back to regular school. I remember that it was very traumatic because I had never even, considered the fact that anybody would, the president was some very important person. He was also in some ways, as a child, a part of the family for me. I mean, I knew that he had kids, and I felt very badly about it, and it was just stunning to me that would happen in this country.
Yeah. I was just wondering, a lot of people have these memories of where were you when, and I just wanted to try and highlight one of those.
Yeah, it wasn't like I was just at home, and it was, it was not a day that was special until that happened, and then it became not a happy day, but a day that I'll always remember.
Now, flash forwarding 20 years, the Leave It To Beaver cast reunites to make a 1982 TV movie, Still the Beaver, which premieres in March of 1983. I know that Hugh Beaumont died in May of 82. I was just wondering, did the planning for the reunion take enough time where it was thought that Hugh was going to be in it?
Yes, it was definitely when we, they first came to us and said we're thinking about it, because before they, went to a lot of trouble and wrote the scripts, they wanted to make sure that everyone would be sort of on board, that there wouldn't be somebody that said, I'm going to be a holdout.
Mm-hmm.
And because, actors can be a little funny that way sometimes. But we were all very happy. I mean, I'd known Hugh Beaumont and talked to him and done things with him, Barbara Billingsley, and all the cast members. There wasn't any person on the cast that we all went, oh, I don't want to work with that person again. We were just a very, very happy cast. And everybody, it was like if somebody, when you graduated from high school, came back to you and said, would you like to go back and see everybody in the, the 6th or 7th grade, and you had a great time at school, you'd say, absolutely, what a fun thing to do. So it sounded to me like, and they said, and you'll be playing the part of basically Ward. You'll have, you just have the name the Beaver, but you'll be the father, and it'll be, the same character, but now he's raising 2 kids. And Wally will have a little girl, so we'll have a girl in the show, which was always one of the things people said, well, why didn't they bring any, why didn't the Cleavers ever have a daughter? So we, took some of the things that were people that always wanted and put them in, and we did it for, almost 200 episodes, and then they lost it.
Ken Osmond was able to include his real-life son, Eric, in the show. And your son, Noah, was at an age appropriate to be your son. Did you ever consider putting him in the show?
He actually is now a sound man, but he never really had any ambitions to be in the movie business. I myself didn't really have any ambitions. I started at 2,
Right.
and somebody just came up and said, my mom went someplace, and the lady said, we're having a fashion show at this big department store. Your boy fits our clothes perfectly. Give you a model, and that's how I started, and then I went to live TV. And he really had no inclination. I also have daughters, and they didn't really have any. I think they saw how much I had to work. I mean, when I was doing the new Leave It To Beaver, I was leaving at like 6 in the morning and getting back sometimes 9, 10, 11 at night. So they saw that it was, a lot of work. Now, as a child, I didn't work like that. But they saw me as an adult actor, and he was a very, very good student. He did go into the industry. He's a sound man, but he didn't really want to be in front of the camera.
Now, the new Leave It To Beaver was my introduction into the entire series. My dad's been a Beaver fan since his childhood, and once I saw that show, he was eager to show me the earlier episodes. Relating to the kids, because I was their age, do you have any contact with these now adults, Kip Marcus, John Snee, or Kalina Kiff?
You know, I really don't. It's just that I'm not very aggressive in the business. I'm basically retired now.
Okay.
I don't know if they are. I haven't seen them go on to other things. They, I think, kind of did it. We did it for several years, and everybody was very happy. It's not like I have any grudge or wouldn't be happy to see them. But it's kind of like if you have a job and then you move on to another job or whatever. If I see him, it'd be great, and if I don't, it's not like I'm trying to hunt him down.
No, but they kind of get left behind, and you all go on to the next thing.
Yeah, you go on to the next thing, and if I see him someplace, it'd be great, but if I don't, it's not like I have something. I don't have any problems with any of them that I want to clear up before something happens.
All right. As a lover of Broadway, one of the roles I wish I could have been able to have seen was you starring as Tracy Turnblad's father in the musical Hairspray. Set in the 50s, this role seems like it was destined for you, but you didn't seek out this role. How did you end up on Broadway?
Well, I had done everything else, to be honest with you. I started on live TV when I was 2 years old, and a lot of people don't know this, but I did an awful lot of acting before I did Leave It To Beaver. A lot of movies. I worked with Hitchcock, with The Trouble with Harry. I worked with Shirley MacLaine, John Forsythe, all in movies. And I did a lot of live television and television, too. And so one of the things that I hadn't really done is stage work. And then in the late 70s, Tony and I started doing dinner theater, and we went all over the country. In fact, we spent a year on the road doing a play that had been written for Jerry Lewis. I played the Jerry Lewis part, and Tony played the Dean Martin part. They'd never done the play, but we adapted it, and all of a sudden, I was then a stage actor. I mean, I hadn't really worked. The stage is a little bit different than film work. And I got a call, and they said, this part opens up every so often because they keep bringing in new people, and we would like you to do it. And I kind of thought, well, okay. And I'm thinking, oh, I wonder what I'm getting myself into. This is Broadway. For an actor, there's television, then there's movies, and then there's theater, and then there's Broadway.
Right.
And they were only doing about 40 to maybe 60% on weekends. The week I went in, they went to standing room only, and the whole time I was there, they did that, and it was really fun. It was a lot of work, and it was just something I could maybe check off my bucket list.
What do you think was the most challenging part of performing live on Broadway?
Singing and dancing. That's not hard at all.
Well, I don't think of Jerry Mathers as a singer.
I don't either.
I've done records, but I'm not a singer, and the dancing, was very, very, but they were very nice. They said, we know that you're not this. We're going to get you some help. And so for several weeks before I went there, I had teachers that taught me and said, this is how you do this step, this is what you do, and everything else.
On our show, Fan Counters, we want to hear about your experience with fans, your encounters with fans. So tell us about your most memorable encounters with some of your fans.
Well, I think some of the most memorable, and to me it's even unbelievable, is a lot of times when I go different places, I'm very, very happy to meet my fans, and they always want autographs. But I have spent up to sometimes 10 and 11 hours going to some place that I thought I'd be there for an hour. I give a little talk sometimes, and I tell them about my early career working on live TV, working with Hitchcock, working with Bob Hope, Alan Ladd, movies, Leave It To Beaver, and after. And then I, talk about going on Broadway. But that, I think, then is probably what I think of the most.
How have your fan encounters changed over the years? Now, I'm sure you've had several when you were a child, when you were on the show. Have those experiences kind of morphed into different things as you've grown older and seen more people?
No, they're always very, very nice. It's never contentious. Everybody likes Leave It To Beaver. Some people say, how come you knew that? Because that's exactly what I did even before I saw that show, and then the Beaver did it. And I always say, well, all the shows were taken from real life, And because of that, there are things that really happen to kids. It's not a joke show like a lot of the comedies are today, where people were trying to do setup, joke. It were
Right.
things that really happened to a kid and things that kids would really do.
I think that's why it's still so popular today.
I believe so. Jerry, one of the things that we didn't tell you was that Nick's dad, Bruce, is in our studio. And this is a gentleman who still DVRs it, even though he owns the complete box set of Leave It To Beaver, but he still DVRs it every morning. And I will tell you, as a super fan of yours, this man just really wants to sit down with you for an hour and ask you about episodes. And I'm sure that he can't be the only one in the world that wants to do that, like ask you about this episode or ask you about that episode. But do you have any memorable ones in your head where you looked at a fan and went, I don't know how to respond to that. That was kind of weird, or that was kind of strange.
Not really, but it's the kind of thing that, honestly, people sometimes will attach to a certain part of a certain show because that's something that especially they've either done or appealed to them, and it may not be. I mean, I did the show for 6 years, so it would be like if someone came to you and said, do you remember when we took that test in geography and we had to find Montenegro and we couldn't find it? Well, no, I don't remember that particular. I remember the whole show, but I might not. But well, I was looking for Montenegro before, and so I remember that one. Well,
Right.
yeah, I kind of remember, but it's not the one that sticks out the most in my mind.
Yeah, I get that.
I'm sure you've seen starstruck fans before. Have you ever been starstruck of another working actor?
Well, I've always found that they're just people, and they're always, it's very, very nice, and I don't mean to sound, pretentious, but it's, that I can walk up to somebody and I don't feel frightened of them. I know a lot of people, sometimes when they come up to me, I can feel that they're maybe a little bashful or, and I'm very happy to say hi to fans, and most of the people I know that are actors are some of them do get bothered a lot, but I've always had a good relationship with all the people I've worked with, and like people like Charlton Heston. I've met him, and he was always somebody I looked up to. And when I met him, I know that it was something that I'll always remember. And I've had people tell me that, and so I know the feeling. It's not like I'm so special that I don't believe that I will ever have that feeling. Now, I've met a lot of actors that I feel really blessed to have even been able to be in the same room with, let alone shake hands and just talk to them for a second. So I always try to feel when I find fans that are not like that, but they're having that experience, it's very, very easy for me because it's nothing. I have nothing to hide and nothing to be ashamed of, and we can always talk. And they say, I remember this part, and I say, well, you better remind me a little bit more because. And they say, well, I did that when I was a kid. And then we talk, and I say, oh, that's that show. It's in that particular show that you saw that.
You mention your mom quite a bit in various interviews. And this year she turned 91. That's pretty remarkable.
Absolutely. Well, she's just a fantastic woman. She's always been very, very active, and she's head of, it's called Catholics Women, which is she's a president of it and has been for several years, and it's one of the biggest Catholic organizations in the United States. She was a wonderful mother, not a studio mother at all, just someone who was, very, very interested. I was 2 years old, walking to a department store. A lady comes up to her and says, could your boy be a model? She said, I don't know. And that's how my career started. So it wasn't like she was, pushing me to do things. She's also the president and has been for several years of the Motion Picture Mothers, which is an organization that helps people, whose kids are just becoming actors, and they meet once a month and then have a big luncheon once a year, which I always go to, and I've spoken at several times. And they help train, I guess would be a good word, but it's not really train. They just tell people whose children are starting in acting kind of to show them the ropes because, it is a very, very interesting job, but there are a lot of things that could be pitfalls and things that they know about that know they shouldn't be doing this. But yes, that's something that is very, very good, and they should do that.
We can tell you've done this before because you answered the question before we even were able to ask it. It's awesome. Jerry, your career featured a lot of firsts, but this particular one I want to talk about was due to your mom really watching out for you and an agent who had your best interest at heart. as far as I can tell, you're the first child actor to ever get a cut of merchandise revenue. And that was practically unheard of at the time for a child. How did your mom know to seek that out when negotiating a contract?
Well, it was my mom and my dad, so it was a joint effort, to be really honest with you. Not that my mom didn't have a lot to do with it, but she just realized that all of a sudden they came to us and said, now we're going to start making this, and this. And she's looking at the contract that I have, and it didn't say anything about any of those or that. So she said, well, what about Jerry? And they went, oh, yeah, well, we could probably give him parts, some of it. And she said, well, yeah, you better, because that's his name and likeness. And yes, you do own him for the character of Beaver, but you don't have, really any kind of thing to do that. And it wasn't a great deal of a big percentage, not like they wanted, some huge amount. But yes, I did get a percentage, and I believe I don't know if I was the first or not, but one of the first people to be able to do that, because a lot of times what they would tell actors is, well, that's the character. That's not really you. Well, it is me, because it's my face and likeness.
Right.
And the character is somebody I play.
Finally, you are quite charitable, especially in the education of diabetes prevention. You've come a long way since being told you have 3 or 4 years to live, and you've shed over 50 pounds and changed the way you ate. What would you tell people in our audience who are dealing with diabetes in one form or another?
Well, I would tell them that there's always hope, and if you are diagnosed, depending where you are on that trail, there are things that you can do now, I'll always be diabetic. I'm now luckily pre-diabetic as far as insulin or, I do take oral medications. It's a very, very heinous disease, and mine was caused, while I was doing the show, I also started a couple businesses, one of which was a catering business. And so I was going out and eating sometimes 5 and 6 meals a day, because when you're a caterer, you go to, say, a movie set, and you're talking about 6 weeks of feeding, like maybe 150 people, and you're talking to the producers, and they're saying, well, will your food be different enough? And so I was taking bites of this and bites of that, and I basically ballooned from about what I am now, which is about 170 pounds, to about 220 to 230. And I have a very good friend that's a doctor, and she was a physician, but she was also a friend of the family. And she kept looking at me and saying, come on in. I said, I feel great. Everything's going good. My life is wonderful. She said, okay, Christmas, I'm giving you a free physical. Well, I walked in. She said, how would you like to live for another 10 years? I said, well, what do you mean? She said, well, if you don't do something about your weight, you're going to have a lot of problems. And because not only was she a doctor, she was a friend, it struck right to the bone, and I said, yes. She said, well, what can I do? I said, what can I do? And she said, well, I don't know if it will help if you lose weight. So I went on a diet, lost the weight, and I'm now pretty much at my ideal weight for my height. And I exercise every day. Before you called today, I walked for an hour. I live in a place that's not real hilly, but I walk up and down hills and on sidewalks and get exercise every day. And I'm controlling my diabetes. I'm now pre-diabetic with diet and exercise.
Now, I have to thank your lovely wife, Teresa, for coordinating this time together. And I found it interesting that you guys actually met each other on a blind date later in life. I'm kind of wondering about that blind date and what her reaction was to going on a date with somebody she might have known as a child as the Beaver.
Well, guess what? I have a big surprise for you. She's right here on the phone. She always listens.
Good.
Very nosy. So, Teresa, how did they feel? You're right there.
Hi. Actually, I knew who he was, of course. He did not know who I was. So I was pretty excited because I grew up with the show as well. So, and I had not been married before. So I was waiting for Mr. Right and the Prince. And fortunately, it all worked out great. So it was a successful blind date.
Did you know
Definitely.
It on date 1?
Actually, we connected pretty well on date 1. And we went to, the really fun story is that Jerry chose a restaurant for lunch, which was his favorite restaurant. And he ordered his favorite food, and he figured that if the date didn't go well, that at least he had a lunch that he would enjoy.
Well, who would ever think that your sister would set you up with somebody that you'd marry and be so happy with for the rest of your life?
Well, how long have you been married?
It's been about 7.5 years.
Okay.
And I waited to be in my 50s, so I waited a long time, and it was a really, really fun. We had a really fun wedding, and it was beautiful. So it was definitely a dream come true.
Aw, that's a great story. Thanks for actually coming on. Now,
Sure, thank you.
You bet. Now, Jerry, you've got a couple appearances coming up later this month in September. You're going to be in Austin, Texas at Wizard World, September 21st, 2nd, and 3rd. And the next month, you'll be at the Super Mega Fest in New England with Tony Dow. That's October 13th and 14th. What do those events mean to you, like that you're able to go and everybody's excited to see you? What gets you excited about doing these things?
Well, it's I have a web page, and I'm on social media. People always complain, I just really would like to meet you and just talk to you, and I don't want to put it on the internet or whatever, but I just I have a question for you or whatever. And it's just so nice to, walk up to somebody, or they actually probably will walk up to me, and you sit there and you just say hello to them, and they go, I really enjoy your work, and I've always wanted to ask you this, that, or the other thing, what was Hugh Beaumont like? Well, he's a wonderful person. He was a Methodist minister. Was Barbara as nice as she seemed? Was Tony really a big athlete? Yes. But, all those questions, and it's just nice, and you see it kind of glow in their face, and it just makes me very happy that I can, brighten their day just a little bit.
And social media has certainly been able to connect you with a lot of fans. You get tons, and I took a lot of time to read through some of these messages that people send you. All heartwarming, fond memories. Do you communicate with people on social media?
Oh, absolutely. Now, obviously, because it's very vast, as we all know, and Leave It To Beaver plays in about, I think it's 32 languages, so it's all over the world. So, in fact, in a lot of places, that's how they really think that Americans still live, because they're still seeing the reruns. It's like in Japan, they use a little girl for my voice. So, but it's just, it's very heartwarming that the show is still so well remembered. A lot of people will come up to me and say, I watched it as a kid, and I was looking at this, and now I get the parents' view. Or it's just so nice that it's such a good show. And I was just very, very lucky to be associated with it.
In our opening, I talked a little bit that, Nick and I have been extremely excited to do this interview, and we've been telling everybody. And I find it quite lovely that I only have to say we're interviewing Jerry Mathers. I don't even get to say the Beaver. And everybody has said it back to me, oh, you're interviewing the Beaver? And I think that speaks volumes for you, because we've tried it here, like on Happy Days or other things where I've given people actors' names, and then they look at me and go, I don't know who that is. And then you tell them the character, and they completely get it. But with you, I only have to say Jerry Mathers, and immediately everyone we told went, oh, the Beaver is coming on. So that really speaks volumes to how much people absolutely love you, that they don't just call you the Beaver, that you actually get to have a real name.
Well, it's part of something that I'm very, very proud of. So people that wouldn't know my name or might not know my name, it doesn't bother me a bit. But it's just so, I'm so happy that the show is done so well. It was made in the 50s, and it's still playing today. I think because it's from real life, it still plays, and people still see that could happen to kids today. And it's just very gratifying to me to be attached to something that, in a lot of ways is an American tradition.
Yeah.
Do you have any other projects coming up that you've been either working on or filming, or anything happening in that regard?
Not a whole lot. I'm pretty much retired. I do a lot of speaking, but with my diabetes, I go around to different places. I put on a lot of weight when I was in college because I was, suddenly eating at a cafeteria and put on a lot of weight, and that's how I got the diabetes. So I always say it's a little like fishing. I go out and I talk about Leave It To Beaver and my working in the entertainment business with all the different Bob Hope and all the different people I've worked with. And then I always just kind of wind it up with a little talk about diabetes. And I look out there, and I do see that a lot of people were overweight. And I know that I didn't know I had diabetes. I got very, very lucky that I had a friend that was a doctor, and she saw that I was putting on a lot of weight.
Yeah.
I owned a catering business and was doing a lot of eating. And she said, you better come in for a physical. And I said, okay. And I went in there, and she said, you've got diabetes. And I went, what? I mean, I'd heard of it, but I really didn't know a whole bunch about it. And then when I found out about it, I realized that it's a horrible disease. I said, what can I do? She said, you have a good chance, possibly, if you lose weight, that it won't be as serious. And I lost the weight, and I'm now, and I will be for the rest of my life, pre-diabetic. So I just got very lucky that I happened to know a doctor that could instruct me about it. And I have a platform that I can get out and tell people, if you're more than 10, 15, 20 and more overweight, you probably should be checked and, and see if you're pre-diabetic. And if you are, you can maybe lose weight. But the quicker you catch it and do something about it, the better off you're going to be.
Well, thank you for providing that education. I mean, it's very important to, you're using your platforms for a very powerful cause, and I think that's awesome.
It's nice to be able to do that for people. I wouldn't, I had no idea, and I'm thinking to myself, I can talk about Leave It To Beaver, and a lot of people love it, and I love it, but, why not do something positive for somebody that wouldn't know unless I happen to mention it?
Well, Jerry Mathers, thank you so much for being on the show this week. We really appreciate you joining us on Fan Counters. This has been a great hour. And
yes, we've had a lovely time.
Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure talking with you.
One more question real fast. Where can we find you on social media?
Oh, well, I have all sorts of places. I have a website, which is jerrymathers.com.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also on Facebook. Well, you know what? My wife is right here. Let her tell me. Because she is my
She's the publicist. Yes.
She's the one in charge.
Sure. Jerry's website, like he said, is jerrymathers.com. And then he's also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And that is the Jerry Mathers.
Someone got Jerry Mathers first.
No, he is the Jerry Mathers.
Okay.
So that's why it's named that. So that's for those three as well. So that's where he can be found. And he has a lot of different things on Facebook and Twitter that he announces his upcoming appearances and all. So it's a great place to find what he's doing and what he's up to.
Outstanding. Thank you so much.
Our thanks to Jerry Mathers for joining us on the show this week.
And his lovely wife, Teresa.
Yes, that was really nice. His publicist, his manager, his travel companion.
Oh, what a fun hour, though. Come on. That was really nice and nostalgic. Because, please, I don't really know anybody who has never seen at least one episode.
Right? Yeah,
Right.
Everybody has. Now, Jerry Mathers and Tony Dow will actually be in New England, just west of Boston, October 13th and 14th, and they're hosting a dinner. If you want to have dinner with Wally and the Beeve, you can do that.
That would be fun.
At the Super Mega Fest website, you can register for that dinner. And if you're going to be in Austin September 21st, 2nd, or 3rd, Jerry will be appearing at Wizard World. So he's a busy guy. He travels all around a lot. And it's funny, he didn't seem to get sick of answering the same Beaver questions over and over.
Right. Well, and I guess from his perspective, I do see that. It is just a wonderful way to have all of your childhood documented in film.
Yeah. Now, we want to thank you for listening to this show. If you're new to the program because you're a fan of Jerry Mathers, you're going to want to join and subscribe to the stream that you're listening on. Whether you're listening to us on iTunes or Stitcher or TuneIn, wherever you're listening, hit subscribe, and you're going to get a lot more shows just like this of some of your favorite celebrities. In fact, coming up in a few weeks, we've got another person you're not going to want to miss, so don't forget to subscribe. If you want to follow us on social media, we are at Fan Counters Live on Twitter and Instagram, and our main community is on Facebook with over 30,000 listeners. You can join them by going to facebook.com/Fan Counters. And if you would like, feedback on the show is greatly welcomed at
hello@fancounters.com.
That's our email address, hello@fancounters.com, and you can send us your show suggestions, feedback, or whatever's on your mind.
We'd love to hear from you.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for this week. Join us again next week right here by subscribing to Fan Counters.
This was a podcast from the PodFix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.